Hello, anatomy class. Welcome back to my lectures again. I hope you liked the one on Friday. This one is not going to feature my veterinary assistant. She's still sleeping. It's very early for her, like before 10. So I am going to have to get used to doing this online video stuff. This is the room I'll be videoing, and this is my office. If you look behind me, you can see the same quality of stuff that I have in my classroom. I'm looking behind me and all I see is the tie-dye duck. So I guarantee that over the course of this class, you're going to be seeing some more interesting stuff at the Newland home because there's plenty. Managed Software Center, fantastic. Welcome to the first day of appendicular skeleton notes. If you see me looking over to that side, I have my notes set up on the other computer. If you would open today's notes on the pectoral girdle, we're going to go through notes on pectoral girdle. Clavicles are lame, scapulae are pretty cool. I wish I had my scapula. My scapula's at school. I mean, I have two, but the extra one in the bag is at school. So we're going to go through the notes the same way as we would in school with me talking about them and telling stories. Your mini quiz tomorrow is right on these notes. Other than me prancing around in front of you and having critter bones to show you, not that much different. Just don't keep looking. It's this way. Don't keep looking at that tie-dye duck. I keep looking at the tie-dye duck. So, pectoral girdle. Pectoral, region of the body, chest. Lateral chest specifically. Sternal is center, pectoral's out to the side. And girdle, I told you before, girdle was the thing grandma wore. Like before old ladies had Spanx, it held grandma's belly in. It went around grandma. For your pectoral girdle hasn't changed. It's still around. It's not the stretchy cloth stuff, but it goes around. The pectoral girdle on you, it said, I didn't write the function of the pectoral girdle on your notes. I'll have to update that, at least my copy. It'll say it by the time you see it, maybe. It's to hold your arms on, honestly. It provides a point of attachment for your upper limbs. It holds your arms on. It's nice because not only is it the socket of your shoulder, it's points of attachment for the muscles of your upper arms, like your biceps, triceps, and deltoids. So, your clavicles are not that exciting until they're not on right. They're thin S-shaped bones. The best way for them to curve, the natural way, is for a downward curve to your sternum in the front, curving upward to the acromion process, the top of your shoulder on the sides. This is the joint we talked about before with an AC joint separation, acromioclavicular. The joint there is boring. It sits like this. It's where your clavicle just sort of sits against your acromion. It's held in place by ligaments, but it's not a deep joint. It's not held in well, and a lot of injuries will pull the arm down and away and separate the AC joint. I had it happen. Ben Roethlisberger, about once a year, gets his AC joint separated. He gets tackled for a football, and that's the same thing that happened to me, and he stands up and his arm's on backward. My arm was on backward. A friend, I had torn his knee cartilage. No, I did that after. I tore his knee cartilage after this. He tackled me in the yard. He yells, football, you're the quarterback. And the next thing I know, I'm laying next to a pile of dog poo in my yard with my arm under me. Separated the AC joint. Clavicles are also easy to fracture because they're very thin. Any crush injury this way runs the risk of either breaking the bone or damaging the joint. I used to be able to show you mine as not right because I had one that curved the correct direction, starting down and going up, and one that curved out forward and not really up. Last year, it's been exactly a year, I think it was a year ago today, actually, where I was pretending to punch my dog with an exercise band at 4 in the morning, and it popped like a gunshot. I thought I died, and it swelled, and now it moves. I can throw a softball. I couldn't for like 15 years, and I blamed it on lacrosse and on getting old. And now I can throw a softball because now my collarbone points the right direction. The guess was scar tissue broke. I don't wheeze like I did before. My chiropractor called it a thoracic cage adjustment. I guess it was pinching my lung. It's nice to know that it took 15 years in pretending to punch my dog to fix that. Once we're done with the clavicles, and we are, I'm scrolling down to scapulae, broad triangular bone of the lateral upper back with more info below. That's a really good picture showing the anatomy of the upper body. The clavicle, the acromion process. You can see that the clavicle sits next to your rib, runs right along there, and that's where the impingement, that's where the pinching was happening on mine, pushing on that rib. You can see the coracoid and acromion processes. We'll talk more about them later. You'll see that those ribs are labeled true ribs. Right before we left school, we were talking about true ribs, false ribs, floating ribs. Good on that. And the sternum, the large knot at the top going down to the badly tied tie at the bottom. You can see the triangle shape of the scapula in that picture too. And for some reason, my formatting on my document is just ugly, but that's okay. The scapula, again, broad triangular bone. You've got two left and right. There are 4 total bones in your pectoral girdle, 2 clavicles, 2 scapulae. Scapulae are exciting. Clavicles are boring. There's a lot going on the scapula because of its role in muscle attachment. Your acromion process is the big one. You can see it in the picture. It's up. It is hook-shaped. Hook-shaped is a pretty good idea for processes that are going to be at least partially used for muscle attachment, and it does. It also forms your acromioclavicular joint with your clavicle. The prefix acro means top, and it's the top of your shoulder. The acromion process is probably one of the top 2 features of the clavicle I'm concerned with as far as its function. There's going to be a big one for location too. Coracoid process, great. For muscle attachment, it goes forward. Acromion goes up, coracoid goes forward. It comes from a Latin word corvus for crow because it's curved like a bird's beak. Glenoid fossa, this is the big guy. This is what makes the shoulder work. Fossa is dent. Fossa is the critter in the woods in Madagascar too. The fossa and King Julian and friends scatter. That's a fossa too. Fossa in terms of a bone, and I did include your bone vocabulary in your, I think it's materials for this course. Your bone sheet is in there. You have a blank packet in there too if you want it. Your notes are all on here. The glenoid fossa is a dent. It's on the lateral scapula, lateral being outside. It's the socket of your shoulder. It's shallow. Shoulders are designed to go the whole way around. Hips are not. We'll talk more about that later. But this is the socket of the shoulder socket, and its shallowness is why it's so easy to slide a shoulder out of joint compared to a hip. Scapular notch, nice idea. Not a primary feature. Your scapular notch, it's kind of like a foramen, only it's a V-shaped cut. It's kind of like the idea of putting a V-shaped cut in the back of a stereo cabinet or the back of a TV cabinet where you got to plug it in, where you run the electrical cord through the notch or through the hole so that you can plug it into the wall. Stuff fits in the notch, nerves and blood vessels, so that it can pass through without laying on top of the scapula and being pinched by the muscle. You have a lot of muscle going through here because of the shoulder mobility. Spine. Posterior. The only big feature of the scapula that you can see only from the back. It's the bump you can feel on the back of your scapula. So if you can see the spine of the scapula, you're looking from the posterior view. That's huge. When I give you a picture of a scapula and have you label it, mini quiz, whatever, if you're looking at a scapula, the spine is a giant ridge and the easiest way to tell if it's posterior. Your scapula doesn't really form a joint with your backbone or a joint with your ribs. It lays over top of a layer of muscle on your ribs. If you have swelling in this muscle, you'll get something called snapping scapula syndrome, and it's disgusting. It's not super painful, but basically the muscle swells and stops your scapula from gliding normally on your ribs. So you move your arm and it goes crackle, crackle, crackle. It's called crepitus, and the muscle just screams. It cracks. It's noisy. I put my arm up when I had it, and my chiropractor went, ew. It's noticeable. And if you can get the swelling out, strengthening the muscles, rebalancing the muscles, we'll fix it. That's where I went to the chiropractor, I think I told you guys, and said, I need a rehab program for this. And he said, write it yourself. I said, thank you. Just because I'm an anatomy teacher, you could still be nice. You could still take care of me. So what you're taking away from this lesson today, couple things. Clavicles aren't real exciting. They're nice. They stabilize the front of your pectoral girdle. No major features. Go sternum to AC joint. The scapula has the socket for your shoulder. It's a shallow socket. It has 2 big processes, the acromion where the clavicle meets and the coracoid for muscle attachment. The scapular notch is nice, good for it. It says scapular, you shouldn't get it on the wrong bone. And the spine is a major posterior feature. So that's what we've got for scapula. Scrolling down to the second page. Oh, look, another scapula. We have angles of the scapula too. This actually is missing from your normal packet. your angles and borders of your scapula. If you go to that page, that is not in the regular packet. That's one of those things I've been meaning to add for like 12 years and never did. The angles and borders are very nice for you to locate features too. And they're named after anatomical landmarks. You'll see, and I'll do first question, anterior or posterior view. I can tell it's anterior. I can't see the spine, so that's good. Easy to know. If you could see the spine, you'd be looking posteriorly. The second thing I do is I find the acromion and coracoid processes and find that as the lateral edge of my scapula. I got the three angles. We'll do those first. Inferior always means bottom. I go for that one first. I label that one first. The second one I go for is where the glenoid cavity is, the glenoid fossa. Both terms are right. That's my lateral or outside angle. After that, I use superior, which means top, as the other one. I go by default because really, to me, the lateral angle is also superior. Because it's at the top of the scapula, it makes sense, but it's also lateral. So I do superior last once I've labeled inferior and lateral. That's the bottom below that, three borders. Love it. The lateral border out to the side is also called the axillary border, as in it's in my armpit, because it pretty much is. That outer border of the scapula does run right along your armpit, and the medial border is also called vertebral. It's the edge by your spinal column, vertebral column. And the superior, again, by default, is top. Superior border makes more sense to me because there aren't options. There's one top edge. So pretty much where the edges are is what you're talking about. To the anatomy of the arm, a brief review since we took the skeletal quiz. I mean, a long time ago, but we took it. So there's my scapula at the top. The clavicle isn't labeled on this picture. There's the humerus, the ulna and radius. Remember, the ulna is the bone that makes your elbow. It's the bump you can feel, and if you follow your ulna down, it comes out on your little finger side. Always, no matter which way I flip my arm. And my radius is always thumb side, no matter what. One each of those bones in the upper limb, the large bone of the upper arm, your humerus. The ulna, longer bone of the forearm, radius, shorter bone of the forearm. We get to the hand and the wrist. We're not memorizing names of carpals, but you do need to know you've got carpals here, as in carpal tunnel syndrome, of the wrist. They form this nice gliding joint. Flap a little bit. They form this nice gliding joint. You have 5 metacarpals, meta being after. You got 1 here on your thumb, 2, 3, 4, 5 in your palm, and you've got 14 separate phalanges that make up the fingers. You got 3, 3, 3, 3, and 2. They're not short bones as little as they are. If you think about this teeny little bone at the end of your finger, it's still technically a long bone because of its shape. Be ready to count phalanges, know which one ain't right, and generally get an idea of the number of bones in your arm. 1 clavicle each side, 1 scapula each side. 1 humerus, 1 ulna, 1 radius. Ulna's long, radius is short. Ulna's little finger, radius is thumb. 8 carpals, 5 metacarpals, 14 phalanges. Tomorrow's mini quiz will come from this. Your mini quizzes are due at 11:59 every night, just like in class. 2 points for a correct, 0 points for incorrect, and a chance to get a really solid grade. You are able to use your materials for them, I guess. I would rather you try to answer them on your own. That's my recommendation, is to see what you know. But for a lot of the worksheets, just like before, you will be able to use your materials to fill in your worksheets. I am going to repost that axial worksheet that I gave you before we left school, with a chance to work on that next week. You still need to do it. If you don't have your axial notes, I'll see what I can do about getting those posted too. I probably can type those up pretty quickly, and that way you'd have them too. I recommended you take that home with you, but whatever. We'll get there. I will put that up soon, and you'll have about 3 days after I can get those up to set up your worksheet and to do it. You probably remember a lot of it. And again, like I keep telling you guys, if you don't know, Google knows. I subscribed to Quizlet yesterday during in-service time, so I'll be able to recommend some Quizlets for you also to review the material. So that's it for this lecture. I know it ain't quite as exciting as school, but might be better than no anatomy class. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.